If you're looking to be a more consistent pitcher with your Sterling irons, then I've got 4 things here that can hopefully help you be a little bit more consistent. So the first thing is to watch the amount of shaft lean that you have at impact. So that versus you may want to come through a little where you arrive at impact with the shaft a little bit more vertical like this, or just slightly forward. You can hit good pitches with it way forward like this. However, what can cause some inconsistencies is understanding what the club face does here. So at the bottom of the club face, you got this pointy part here, where it's called the leading edge, and then this bottom part here, this curvy part here, that's called the bounce. And cleverly, I've heard that called the leading edge here called the digger, and then the bottom bounce here called the skipper. And why that's important to understand why those are named that way is if you come through with too much shaft lean, you're exposing this pointy part to the ground. So there's going to be a higher propensity for this club to grab and dig in the ground. However, if you come through a little bit more vertical, you've got a little bit of protection here with this bounce. It's going to keep the club, it's going to lower the likelihood, I guess, of the club face digging into the ground. So that's the first thing I would say, is just to watch the amount of shaft lean. Don't be too far shaft forward. You can get a little bit of more forgiveness if you're a little bit more vertical or just slightly forward. You can even catch it just a little bit fat, hit the club face behind, hit it on the ground behind the ball, and sometimes you can get away with it when you're a little bit more vertical like that. And you see that with today's best pitchers. I'm trying to think of someone who I can give as an example. But anyway, the best pitchers on the professional tours tend to be ones that arrive back at impact with a little bit more vertical or just slightly forward shaft lean. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to watch the amount of club face rotation through impact. And why that's important here, I'll use this little magnetic lie angle tool, stick it on the club face so you can see where the club face is pointed. Normally, or commonly, I guess, in teaching, we're taught to set up with the club face pretty square here, square-ish, and then in the backswing, you're supposed to open the club face up, and then on the way down, you close it, roll it over, and so that you have the toe up when you come through there. However, as you can see, when you're rotating the club face like that, or rotating the club head like that, the club face just points all over the place. So I think it's better, particularly down through the hitting area here, to have the club face be more square to your swing path. So watching the amount of rotation that you're using, and when you do that, you can see that there's much less, the club face is much, there's much less variance. So you may not hit perfect pitches every time, but your dispersion might go from like something like this to something like this. So watching the club face rotation is something that can definitely help you be a more consistent pitcher. And then the next thing is to try to pick or sweep or collect the ball, however you want to say that, versus hitting down on it, trying to take a divot, having a steep angle of attack. And the reason for that, again, it goes back into this leading edge and bounce thing. If you're coming through a little bit more vertically like this, and you're sweeping or collecting the ball, the likelihood of you hitting it super fat is going to be much, much less. And a lot of the top pitchers in the world are doing that, not taking much divot. So guys like Zach Johnson, Nicholas, when he played, when he was, we talk about his full swing, he wouldn't take much of a divot. So there's Count Yogi, if you've ever heard of him. So there's a lot of great players that you can hit good shots hitting divots, but I would say if you're looking to be more consistent with your contact, then try to pick it, try to sweep it. And then interestingly, with your pitching, also what that does is when you have the club face coming through a little bit higher, the strike is going to be a little bit lower on the club face versus up a little bit higher. And due to vertical gear effect, we won't get into what that is in this particular video, but just know that generally speaking, the higher on the club face that you hit, the less spin that it has, and the lower on the club face you hit, the more spin there's going to be. So when you pick and sweep it, it's going to strike the ball a little bit lower on the club face, and it's going to give you a little bit more spin, which is something that I think a lot of people wouldn't mind having with more with their pitches. So although it may not help, the spin part of it may not relate to the consistency aspect of pitching. It's a nice little byproduct that you can get by just picking and sweeping or collecting, however you want to say that. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing, the last thing here, is to, when you're swinging, when you're pitching, try and be as smooth as you can. So we don't have much of a margin of error here between like a good and a great shot. So if you think about a tether ball and a maypole, if you throw the ball around the maypole and there's no tension in the string, the ball's going to come around to the same point every time. However, if you introduce a little tension in the string, it's really going to disrupt the fluidity, and when the ball comes around, it's not going to come around at the same point in space, or it's not as likely to. So be smooth if you can, be as smooth as you can when you're pitching. And a nice little drill that you can do for that is just when you're practicing and no one's around, if you don't care what other people are thinking about what you're doing here, you can either hum while you're swinging or blow a little subtle amount of air out of your nose and mouth that you can sense, but maybe other people can't hear. And if there's a smooth flow of air or a smooth hum while you're swinging, generally the tension is going to be pretty relaxed, you're going to be pretty smooth. However, if it has a little, when you're swinging, there's going to be a little bit of tension that you can let loose and get rid of. And so I think swinging as smooth as you can will help your consistency quite a bit. And if you need to hit the ball farther, then just take the club back further or just go up to another club to get that extra distance. So those are the 4 things I would offer for you to be a more consistent pitcher with your Sterling irons. 1, watch the amount of shaft lean. Don't be too far forward. Be a little bit more vertical or just slightly forward. Watch the club face rotation as you're coming through impact. Try and have a more square face to path is what they call it. The third thing, sweep, pick, or collect the ball. It's going to help you put a little bit more spin on it, which is a nice thing, but then it's also going to decrease the likelihood of you hitting the ground and hitting one super fat or something like that. So, and just remember that good pitchers, the best pitchers tend to do that. And that's getting taught a lot more now that we know that on the professional tours and then just in the instruction world at large. And then lastly, pitch as smooth as you can, swing as smooth as you can. It doesn't necessarily mean go slow. Just be smooth, and then you can use that little air blow or humming trick to practice that and kind of monitor your tension level. So hopefully those 4 things will help you become a little bit more consistent pitcher with your Sterling irons. Give those things a try, and hopefully your consistency will improve.